Hey there, sixth grade teachers. Miss Nelson here, and I am going to be showing you the lesson over multiplying integers modeling. So your students need this recording sheet that's located on the P drive. They also need a handful of counters, a number line, blank number line, and then you will need the lesson plan. Okay, so again, you can give your students some playtime if they would like. There is a YouTube video. It's very juvenile, but it helps set the stage for multiplication. I was reading some information about how our ESL students don't understand the word times. And so this is a great way to help our ESL students understand the word groups of, so they'll understand making groups of things. This is going to be something we use the whole entire time. So you might want to write on the board blank groups of blank, and that will help our students recognize what we're going to be using for multiplication. So the first thing we're going to have our students model is 3 multiplied by 4, or 3 times 4, or 3 groups of 4. So what we're going to have is 3 groups of 4 white or yellow counters. So group 1, group 2, and group 3. So 3 groups of 4. So when we're multiplying 3 times 4, we're going to have 3 groups of 4, and then we're going to put everything together to get a total, and we get a total of 12. So you're going to be writing these things on the board. You can have them also write them on their anchor chart like we have done in the past. So right now, 9 times 4 equals 12. Notice that all of the representations we have of our multiplication is either a number dot another number, or a number parentheses another number. Moving forward, starting in 6th grade, they are now not expected to put a multiplication sign between their two numbers. So you can have that conversation with your students that this is how multiplication now looks. It either has a dot between it, or it's two numbers next to each other with one set of those numbers being in parentheses. The reason being is we are going to be introducing x as a variable, and we will not be using x as a multiplication sign anymore. So this is up on the board. We'll just keep writing them down and address them here in a little bit and look for patterns. Okay? So our students will then model this on their sheets. So they should have they can do it horizontally, vertically, it doesn't matter. 3 sets of 4 equals 12. Okay? So our next question is going to be 3 times a negative 4. 3 multiplied by a negative 4. So we're going to have 3 groups of negative 4. So 1 group of 4, 2 groups of negative 4, and 3 groups of negative 4. Okay? So then we ask ourselves, how many total counters do we have? There are a total of 12 red, so 12 negative counters. All right, so three times negative 4 equals a negative 12. Okay, now we will model negative 3 times 4. We would normally say negative 3 groups of positive 4, but is it possible for us to say negative 3 groups? Not really. So if you have a negative in the very front of your problem, you're going to use this the negative right here is going to say the opposite of. So the opposite of 3 groups of 4. So you're going to model first 3 groups of 4. So we've done that before already. So here's a group of 4. Here's a group of 4. And here's 3 groups of 4. So now if we're taking the opposite of 3 groups of 4, how are we going to take the opposite of them? So hopefully a couple of your students, if not all, will say, hey, can we flip them? For sure. That's exactly what we're going to do. Taking the opposite of 3 groups of 4. So we have 3 groups of 4. We're going to take the opposite of those. So now we're going to flip these. Then we ask ourselves, what is our total? The opposite of 3 groups of 4 is a negative 12. Opposite of 3 groups of 4 is a negative 12. Okay? So, lastly, we're going to multiply negative 3 times a negative 4. Oh, I'm sorry. How do we model that? So we have 3 groups of 4. And then we're going to flip it to be a negative 12. Okay? So we have the next one is the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4. So we're going to start out with 3 groups of negative 4. Then we want to take the opposite of that. So if we're going to take the opposite of something, then we're going to flip them. So we have the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4, then ends up being a positive 12. Okay, so then they will model this. 3 groups of negative 4. And then we're going to take the opposite of that, which ends up being a positive 12. Okay, so that is how we model with the counters. Now let's model with the number line. Give them some time to draw, doodle if they need to, get it out of their system. Okay, so we're going to use the same language as earlier. And this time we're going to start out with 2 times 5, or 2 groups of 5. So just like we did with our number line with addition, we are going to always start at 0. And we're going to move which direction? 2 groups of 5. 5 is where how many we're moving, and that's the direction we're going to go. So it's a positive 5. So 1 group of positive 5. Now 2 groups of positive 5. So that is going to then finish us up at a positive 10. So then your students will then document here that they have gone 5 and 5 and they have finished at 10. So then we can do this again over here on the board. Okay, the next one we are going to be doing is 5 groups of negative 2. 5 groups of negative 2. So on the number line, which direction are we going to move? We're going to move in the negative direction, 2, and we're going to do that 5 times. So I did boxes. Some of your students might like to do like arches. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 groups of negative 2 puts us at a negative 10. Again, don't forget to start at 0. Our answer is negative 10 because we have gone 5 times of negative 2. Okay. Next question is going to be negative 2 times 5. Negative 2 times 5. So what does that look like here? It's the opposite of 2 times 5. So we're going to start out with 2 times 5 first. Starting at 0, we're going from 0 to 5, and we're doing that twice. Okay, so we have 2 groups of 5. Now, if we're taking the opposite of 2 groups of 5, is there any ideas? You're going to ask your students if there is any ideas of how we can model the opposite of this. So some ideas have come up is they can just draw it and flip it like this on their number line, flip it all the way over here. Another option is actually taking the number line and flipping it upside down. So now which side of the 0 we're at? We're on the -10 side. Okay, so our answer is -10. And how do we do that here on our number line? 2 groups of 5. 1, 2 groups of 5. And then we have to take the opposite of that. So we're going to come down here and take the opposite of that. So our answer is -10. Okay? Then lastly, the opposite of 2 groups of -5. So -2 times -5. So we've gone 2 groups of -5. So there's our first group of -5, our next group of -5. So we've gone our 2 groups of -5, then we have to now take the opposite of that. You flip it over, boom. Our 10 is now on the right-hand side, which is positive, okay? So this is a positive 10. We've got 2 groups of -5. And then we've taken that and we've taken the opposite of it. And so we're at 10. Okay, so, oops, I'm sorry. I forgot to write these down as we were going. 5 groups of -2. -2 times 5. And then, -2 times -5. Excuse me. Okay, so now we start having the conversation with our students about what kind of patterns we see in these right here. So what do we notice when we are multiplying 2 positives about our answer? Okay, what do we notice about multiplying 2 negatives about our answer? So we can talk about these 2 first. And so they should see that, okay, those are positive. Our answer is positive, our answer is positive. So then lastly, you can ask your students, what do we notice about when we multiply 1 positive and 1 negative? So 1 positive, 1 negative, 1 positive, 1 negative. What do we see about our answer choices? That they are both negative. So that's whenever you can develop your mad face, okay? We talk to students, okay, so if we have 2 negatives, if we cover that up, it's going to be a positive answer. If we have a positive and negative, it's going to be a negative answer. So if we are same signs, it's going to be a positive. Different signs, it's going to be a negative. Okay? Alright, and that is all I have for this video on multiplying integers.